Husband abandons wife at delivery room to marry his rich boss. Unaware she just closed a $10 billion deal. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe, and let's know where you are watching. The story from in the comment section. The rain outside sounded like 1,000 nails hitting the hospital windows. Inside room 208, Emily Hart gripped the cold metal rails of the hospital bed, her knuckles pale from the effort. Her face was damp with sweat, strands of hair sticking to her forehead. The contractions were coming fast now, sharp waves of pain that made her gasp for breath. But through the blur of pain, she kept glancing at the man standing by the window. Her husband, Daniel. He wasn't watching her. He wasn't holding her hand. He wasn't even looking in her direction. Instead, he was staring down at his phone, his thumbs moving quickly across the screen. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice weak but pleading. He didn't look up. "Yeah." She swallowed hard, another contraction hitting. "I need you. Please." "I can't." She winced as her back arched from the pain. He sighed. Actually sighed, like she was interrupting something important. I'm right here. Just breathe or whatever they tell you to do. You'll be fine." The nurse, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, shot Daniel a sharp look. "Sir, she's in active labor. She needs your focus, not your phone." Daniel smiled politely but didn't put the phone down. "I am focused," he muttered. "Just handling something real quick." Emily's heart sank. She wished she could ignore it, but she knew that tone. Flat, distracted, almost impatient. Another contraction ripped through her, this one making her cry out. Daniel finally walked over, his hand brushing her arm in a quick, half-hearted touch. "It's okay," he said without looking at her face. "You'll be fine." She caught his eyes for just a moment, but before she could speak, his phone buzzed again. He snatched it up instantly. His whole posture changed. He straightened, his eyes alert, the hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Emily tried to breathe through the pain, but her mind started racing. Who's texting him at a time like this? The nurse was adjusting the monitors when Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time Emily saw it, the name lighting up his screen. Veronica Steele. Emily knew that name. She'd heard it 100 times. Daniel's boss. Wealthy, powerful, always dressed like she was stepping off the cover of a magazine. Emily had never met her, but she'd seen pictures. And she'd seen the way Daniel's eyes lit up whenever he talked about her. Daniel turned slightly toward the window, reading the message. His lips curved into a smile. Smile Emily hadn't seen directed at her in months. "I'll be right back," he said suddenly. Emily's heart stopped. "Right back? Daniel, I'm about to have our baby." "You can't." "I just need a minute," he said, already heading for the door. The nurse spoke up. "Sir, she's progressing fast. You could miss." But the door had already swung shut behind him. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Emily fought through each contraction with the nurses, steady voice guiding her. But the ache in her chest was worse than the pain in her body. She kept looking toward the door, expecting him to come back any second. But he didn't. When the contractions slowed for a moment, she reached for her phone on the side table. Her hands trembled as she opened her messages. Nothing from him. She tried calling. It rang twice, then went straight to voicemail. Another contraction hit, so strong it nearly made her scream. She gripped the rails and breathed in shaky bursts, tears blurring her vision. The nurse touched her shoulder gently. "Sweetheart, you're doing amazing. He'll be back." Emily wanted to believe that. Nearly an hour later, the door opened. Daniel stepped inside, his hair damp from the rain, his face calm, too calm. He wasn't rushing, wasn't apologizing, wasn't even pretending to be out of breath. Emily stared at him, searching his face for an explanation. But he didn't offer one. Instead, he walked to the side of the bed and cleared his throat. "We need to talk." She blinked, confused. "Talk? Now?" "Daniel, I'm in labor. I can't do this anymore. His voice was steady, almost rehearsed. This marriage is done. Her mouth fell open. What? I've been thinking about it for a while, he continued, his eyes flicking toward the floor. We've just grown apart. You're comfortable with small things, small dreams. I need more out of life. Can't be stuck in this forever. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Stuck? I'm your wife. We're having a child right now. He shifted uncomfortably. I know, and I'll take care of the baby financially. But I can't. Look, I'm leaving. Today. Emily stared at him, her mind struggling to catch up to his words. Leaving? For who? His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. It's her, isn't it? Emily's voice cracked. Veronica Steele. He didn't deny it. The nurse stepped back, her eyes wide, clearly unsure if she should intervene. Emily's voice shook. You're walking out on your wife in a hospital room while she's giving birth. To run off with your boss. Daniel looked at her, but his eyes were cold. Veronica understands me. She's successful. She can give me a life you never could. The pain that ripped through Emily's chest was nothing compared to the next contraction. But this time she didn't cry out. She just stared at him. Go, she said finally, her voice low but steady. If you walk out that door now, don't ever walk back in. He hesitated for half a second. Then he turned, opened the door and left without looking back. The moment the door closed, Emily broke. Tears streamed down her face as the nurse rushed to her side. Honey, I'm so sorry. He's a fool. You focus on you and that baby, all right? We'll get you through this. Emily nodded weakly, biting her lip to keep from sobbing. In her mind, the scene replayed over and over, his calm face, his steady voice, the way he'd walked out without hesitation. She took a deep breath. I can do this. I don't need him. The nurse squeezed her hand. Ready to meet your little one? Emily closed her eyes for a second. She was ready, not just for the baby but for whatever came next. Because Daniel might have walked out thinking she was small, weak, and replaceable. But he had no idea what she was capable of. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The rain had slowed to a cold drizzle by the time Daniel walked out of the hospital. He didn't look back once. He didn't want to see Emily's face. He didn't want to hear her voice calling his name, asking him to stay. He had made his choice, and in his mind he was moving on to something better. A sleek black limousine waited at the curb. The back door swung open before he reached it. From inside, Veronica Steele's voice floated out. Smooth, confident, the kind of voice that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. Daniel, she said with a faint smile, get in, you're dripping on my car. She looked every bit the woman he remembered from company events. Dark tailored suit, silk, blouse, hair pinned flawlessly in place. Her perfume carried the expensive kind of confidence he craved. Daniel slid into the soft leather seat, and the moment the door shut, the world outside seemed to fade away. I trust it's done? Veronica asked, glancing at him over the rim of her wine-red lipstick. Daniel nodded. She knows. It's over. Any trouble? He smirked faintly. She didn't make a scene, just sat there. I think she's known for a while. Veronica leaned back, her eyes sharp despite the smile on her lips. Good. I don't deal with drama. I deal with results. And you, Daniel, will give me results. Her phone buzzed, and Daniel caught the name on the screen. Someone big in the finance world. She replied with a quick text before turning her attention back to him. You've been wasting yourself in that marriage, she said matter-of-factly. You were meant for more than small paychecks and modest living rooms. I can give you a place in my world. A life where you don't have to think twice before buying what you want. Daniel grinned, letting her words feed the image in his head. That's what I've been waiting for. Veronica's smile widened slightly. Then stop waiting. Start proving yourself. Meanwhile, back in the hospital room, Emily was staring at the tiny face of her newborn son. His eyes were closed, his breathing soft, his little hands curled into fists. She brushed her finger gently over his cheek. It's just you and me now, she whispered. Her phone buzzed on the side table. She reached for it, expecting maybe a message from her sister or a friend. Instead, she saw the name she'd been waiting months to hear from, the lead investor in the deal she'd been working on in secret. The message was short. Deal closed. 10 billion secured. Funds transferred. Her heart pounded. She read it again just to be sure. Months of late nights, secret calls, and careful negotiations had led to this moment. She had done it. Finalized the largest merger in Globaltecha's history. And Daniel didn't have a clue. She smiled faintly, but not from pride. It was the kind of smile that came from knowing something no one else did. For months, Daniel had looked at her as if she were small, ordinary, a woman who should leave the big plays to people who could handle them. Emily thought of those words now, people who could handle them. She looked down at her. Baby, we're going to be more than fine, she murmured. That night, the hospital room was quiet except for the hum of the machines. Emily's mind was not. She replayed everything. Daniel's cold tone, the way he'd walked out, the name Veronica, steel glowing on his phone screen. She knew Veronica's reputation. Ruthless, brilliant, and loyal to no one. Daniel thought he'd stepped into a life of wealth and influence. Emily suspected he'd stepped into something else. Entirely, a cage dressed up as a penthouse. The next morning, while a nurse helped her pack her things, her phone rang again. This time it was Globaltecha's board of directors. The official announcement would go public in 2 weeks. They told her. They wanted her to be the face of the historic deal. Every headline, every interview, every photo, hers. Emily agreed without hesitation. She knew exactly what it would mean when Daniel saw her face on the news. She wasn't going to call him. She wasn't going to explain. She would let the world tell him who she had become. Across the city, Daniel was sitting across from Veronica at her private penthouse table. Dinner. For two. Candles flickering. A bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. He leaned back in his chair, wearing the self-satisfied smile of a man who believed he had just traded up. To new beginnings, Veronica said, lifting her glass. Daniel clinked his against hers. And leaving the past behind. Veronica's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She took a slow sip of champagne before setting the glass down. Just make sure the past doesn't find its way back to you. He laughed, not catching the weight in her tone. He thought he had everything under control. He had no idea how wrong he was. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in the middle of a glittering ballroom, the smell of expensive perfume and champagne hanging in the air. The gala was one of the biggest events in the city's business calendar, a place where millionaires came to show off and billionaires came to make deals. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, and waiters in black vests moved like clockwork. Between the tables, beside him, Veronica Steele looked like she had stepped straight out of a glossy magazine cover. Sleek black gown, diamond earrings catching the light, her smile calculated for every camera that pointed her way. Daniel tugged at his cufflinks, enjoying the way people's eyes followed them. He felt important, elevated, like this was the life he had been meant to live. He had been telling himself that for days now, letting it erase the image of Emily in that hospital bed. A photographer passed by. Ms. Steele, Mr. Carter, over here. Daniel slipped an arm around Veronica's waist as the flash went off. He liked the way that sounded, Mr. Carter, standing next to the woman who could open doors he never even knew existed. Half an hour into the event, the music softened, and the master of ceremonies took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, May I have your attention for tonight's most anticipated announcement? The chatter in the room stilled. Daniel sipped his champagne, barely listening until he heard the words global tech and historic $10 billion merger. He straightened in his chair, curious. That was big news in their world. The MC continued, "Tonight, we celebrate the remarkable leadership that made this possible. Please join me in congratulating the new CEO of Global Tech, Emily Hart." For a split second, Daniel thought he had misheard. But then the massive projection screens around the ballroom lit up with her face, Emily's face, smiling confidently, dressed in a sleek navy suit, her hair neatly pulled back. The applause was deafening. Cameras flashed. People stood to clap. Daniel's champagne glass slipped in his hand, spilling onto the tablecloth. Veronica didn't clap. She simply watched him, her eyes sharp with something he couldn't read. He couldn't tear his gaze from the screens. His wife, no, his ex-wife, was now one of the most powerful business figures in the country. The caption under her picture read, "Emily Hart secures record $10 billion deal. Appointed CEO." The MC's voice boomed again. Her vision and determination brought together the largest international partnership in our industry's history. This is leadership at its finest. Daniel's throat felt dry. The words hit him like a slow punch to the gut. He thought about the nights she'd stayed up late, the quiet phone calls she'd stepped outside to take, the files she kept in her locked laptop. All those moments he had brushed off as small things. He had walked away from this. Around him, people were talking excitedly about Emily. How brilliant she was, how she had pulled off the impossible. A few glanced at Daniel with curious eyes, whispering behind champagne flutes. Veronica finally leaned toward him, her tone cool. "Looks like your past caught up to you after all." Daniel turned to her, his voice tight. "You knew." Her lips curved in the faintest smile. "Of course I knew. Everyone who matters knew this deal was coming. The question is, why didn't you?" Daniel's hands clenched in his lap. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The applause died down as the program moved on. But Daniel's mind stayed locked on that image of Emily, larger than life on the screen, surrounded by power, respect, and admiration. He had traded a diamond for glitter, and the glitter was already starting to fade. He sat through the rest of the night in silence, the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter grating against him. For the first time, the room felt smaller. And for the first time, Daniel wondered if he had just made the worst decision of his life. It was 3 weeks after the gala when Daniel finally pulled up to the high steel gates of the Hart estate. He had been here once before, years ago, when the property was just a dusty plot of land. Emily had said she would turn into something beautiful. He had laughed then, told her it was too ambitious, too expensive. Now the gates stood tall and gleaming with security cameras, following his every move. Beyond them, he could see the curve of a paved driveway, disappearing into manicured gardens. Daniel killed the engine of his car, sitting in silence for a moment. His hands rested on the steering wheel, but they felt restless. He had told himself a dozen stories in the past few days about why he was here, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, maybe just to see her. But underneath them all was the truth. He had nowhere else to go. Things with Veronica had soured quickly after the gala. The charm she'd shown him in the beginning was gone, replaced with short, cold conversations and clipped reminders about earning his keep. She'd started taking business trips without telling him, and when she was home, she treated him like an accessory she no longer wore in public. Daniel had thought he'd be the exception. He wasn't. Now he was here, flowers in hand, hoping there was still a way back. He pressed the intercom button beside the gate. A crackle of static, then Emily's voice came, through cool, even, and unfamiliar in its calm control. "Yes, Emily, it's me, Daniel." There was a long pause on the line, the kind of silence that stretched enough to make his stomach tighten. Then she said, "What do you want?" "I need to see you. Please, Just for a few minutes. Another pause. Then the gates slid open with a slow, mechanical hum. Daniel stepped back into his car and drove through, trying to push down the flicker of hope in his chest. The driveway curved around a fountain before stopping in front of a house that was more like a statement than a home. White stone walls, tall glass windows, a front door big enough to make a king feel small. He got out, flowers still in his grip, and climbed the steps. Emily opened the door before he could knock. She stood there with their son on her hip, the child's chubby hand clutching the collar of her cream sweater. She looked different, stronger. Somehow, the softness he remembered in her had been replaced with something sharper. "Daniel," she said simply. He tried for a smile. "Hey, you look great." She didn't return it. "Why are you here?" He cleared his throat, holding the bouquet out to her. "I came to apologize for everything was wrong. I should have been there for you, for him." He glanced at the boy, who stared back at him with wide, curious eyes. "And I let my pride get in the way. I made a mistake, Emily. See that now?" She didn't take the flowers. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. You made a choice." He shifted uncomfortably. "I know. I thought I was chasing something better. But I realize now that what we had, was worth more than any of that." Emily's gaze didn't soften. "What you had was a family, and you left it in the delivery room, because you saw an easier way to get rich." Daniel opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "And before you say it wasn't about money, don't. I've replayed that day more times than I can count. You didn't even look back, Daniel. Not once." He felt the sting of her words but pressed on. "I want to fix this. I want to be here. For you. For him. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for another chance." Emily studied him for a moment, then shifted her son in her arms. "You think this is about deserving, Daniel? You think if you say the right words we can just rewind?" She shook her head slowly. "The truth is, you left me when I was at my weakest, and I survived without you. More than survived." He took a step closer. "Emily, please. I saw you on that stage. I'm proud of you. I want to be part of that world with you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That world? The one you told me I couldn't handle? The one you walked away from before it even began?" Daniel hesitated. "I didn't know." "That's right," she cut in. "You didn't know, because you never cared to ask. You assumed I was small, that I couldn't dream bigger than the walls you built around me." Her words landed heavy, each one pressing down on him. Emily shifted her son again, her voice quieter now but no less sharp. "He'll know who you are. Won't lie to him about that. But he'll also know what you did. And he'll know that respect isn't something you get just because you share blood. It's something you earn." Daniel swallowed hard. "So, that's it? You're just shutting me out?" She held his gaze for a long moment. "You shut yourself out, Daniel. I'm just leaving the door closed." The silence between them stretched. Daniel looked at the flowers in his hand, then back at her. Finally, he set them down on the step. "For what it's worth, I am sorry." Emily didn't answer. She stepped back inside, and the heavy front door closed with a deep, final sound. Daniel stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, before turning toward his car. The gates opened automatically as he drove away, but this time he felt no hope on the other side, only the hollow echo of what he'd lost. Inside, Emily set her son down in the living room, watching him crawl toward a pile of toys. She picked up the flowers from the step and carried them to the kitchen, setting them in a vase. Not because she wanted them, but because she believed in making something useful out of what's left behind. As she filled the vase with water, she thought about the lesson in all of it. Not just for her son, but for herself. People will show you who they are when you're at your weakest. And when they do, you have to decide if you'll let them define you or if you'll define yourself. Emily had made her choice. And as for Daniel, he was learning his own lesson, driving down a long, empty road with the Realization heavy in his chest. Betrayal in pursuit of quick gain will cost you more than you can ever recover.